When Lana suggested we go to a Halloween costume party, I didn't think twice about it. We'd been together for almost 7 years, and parties like these were our thing. A chance to loosen up, have some fun, and escape the routine. But this time, Lana was more excited than usual. She insisted we wear matching costumes. Not just similar, but identical, down to the last detail. Full-face masks that completely concealed our features. Matching elegant black outfits. I laughed at her enthusiasm, not seeing any harm in playing along. "It'll be fun," she said, flashing me that playful smile that I'd always loved. The night of the party, we arrived at Alex and Emily's place. They were our close friends, been with us through everything. Alex was the one who introduced me to Lana in the first place. I wasn't surprised to see them also dressed in costumes, but what did catch me off guard was that their outfits were identical to ours. "Whoa, what are the odds?" I said, chuckling, as Alex greeted us at the door. He had the same black suit, the same mask. Lana laughed it off like it was some big coincidence. "Looks like great minds think alike," she said. But something about the way she said it felt off. I brushed the thought aside, though. Why overthink? It's just a party after all. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. Music blared. Laughter filled the air. And everyone was hidden behind their masks, like characters in some twisted, anonymous play. I let myself get lost in it. Drinks flowed freely, and Lana stuck close to me, flirting playfully in that way she always did at parties. I noticed her glancing at Alex, but again didn't think much of it. Just part of the fun, right? After a few drinks, we started mingling more, splitting off into different conversations. The room was full of people in masks, and the anonymity started to feel strangely exciting. I caught glimpses of Lana here and there, always close, always laughing with someone. I'd see Alex with her at times, and once again, that small, nagging feeling crept up. But it was Halloween. Everyone was playing a role, acting out their fantasies. That's what the night was for. Little did I know, the roles we were playing were more than just costumes. As the night went on, the party got wilder. People were drinking, laughing, and dancing like they were completely free. The masks did something to us all, like we weren't ourselves anymore. I lost sight of Lana at one point, and for the first time that night it bothered me. I scanned the room, looking for her familiar black dress and mask, but the crowd made it hard to tell who was who. Everyone was moving, blending into one another, and with so many people in similar costumes, it was impossible to know for sure. I kept looking, weaving through the mass of bodies, catching glimpses of masks and laughter, but no sign of Lana. Alex was gone too. I hadn't seen him in a while, but that didn't seem strange. He and Emily were always social butterflies at parties, jumping from group to group. Still, something nagged at me. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was being paranoid. After a while, I gave up searching. Maybe she'd just gone outside for some air or was lost in a conversation with someone. I decided to get another drink and let myself relax. If she was having fun, why spoil it with unnecessary worry? I stood at the bar, sipping a cocktail, when I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned, and there she was, or at least I thought it was her. Black dress, same mask, the way she tilted her head at me. That familiar gesture. "Thought I'd lost you," I said, relieved. She didn't say anything, just gave a small, teasing laugh and grabbed my hand, pulling me toward a dark corner of the room where the music was quieter, and the shadows were deeper. I couldn't help but be drawn in. The mystery, the anonymity of the night. It felt like we were someone else for a moment, like rules didn't matter. We were alone now, just the two of us, hidden from the rest of the party. She pressed herself against me, her hand sliding down my chest, fingers tracing along the edge of my jacket. It was Lana, I was sure of it. The way she moved, the way she touched me, there was no mistaking it. Without a word, we fell into the moment, the thrill of being hidden in plain sight, surrounded by strangers, yet utterly alone. My pulse raced, and everything else faded away. I lost track of time, lost track of everything but her. When we finally pulled away, breathless, I reached for her mask. "Let me see you," I said, laughing slightly, my voice still thick with the adrenaline of the moment. But when I lifted the mask, my heart stopped. It wasn't Lana. I was staring into the eyes of Emily. For a moment, everything around me blurred into a haze. I was staring at Emily, her eyes wide with shock, her lips slightly parted, as if she couldn't believe what had just happened either. My breath caught in my throat. The woman I had just been with wasn't Lana. It was Emily, my best friend's wife. Emily? I barely managed to whisper, my voice shaky and hoarse, as if it had been ripped out of my chest. Her face flushed deeper, a crimson mask of confusion and guilt. For a second, neither of us moved. We were like statues, frozen in the dim light of the room. I wanted to reach out to say something, anything, but my mind was a chaotic storm. How the hell did this happen? My thoughts scrambled, trying to retrace every moment of the last hour, every touch, every glance. The matching costumes, the anonymity of the masks, the alcohol that dulled my senses, the darkened room. It all came together in a twisted puzzle. But none of that justified what just happened. Emily was the first to break the silence. Her hand flew up to her face, desperately pulling her mask back down as if that would somehow erase what had just occurred. Her fingers trembled, the mask slipping slightly as she clumsily adjusted it, her chest rising and falling with rapid breaths. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her eyes said it all: panic, regret, shame. With one last glance at me, Emily turned on her heel and disappeared into the crowd. Her black dress blended in with the sea of masked figures, and just like that, she was gone. I watched helplessly, feeling like I'd just stepped off a cliff and there was no bottom in sight. I stood there, paralyzed, my mind reeling. My heart pounded in my chest, and the room around me suddenly felt suffocating. How could I have been so blind? I clenched my fists, staring at the empty space where Emily had just been. I'd known her for years, and I'd just confused her for my wife. My wife. Lana. The name hit me like a brick. I needed to find her. Now. I couldn't breathe until I found her, until I saw her, until I what? Told her what happened? Confessed that I'd just slept with Emily, thinking it was her? My stomach twisted into knots at the thought. But, Lana, where was she? My eyes darted around the room again, scanning every corner, every cluster of guests. But nothing, no sign of her. Panic started to creep in, coiling around my chest. I pushed through the crowd, ignoring the laughter and chatter, the clinking glasses, the sound of the music that now felt distant, like it was playing in another world. I felt my pulse in my temples as I moved faster, searching, desperate. Where was she? And then I saw her. At first it felt like relief, just to finally see her standing there in that familiar black dress. But relief quickly turned to something darker, something colder. Lana was by the staircase, her back to me. She was with Alex. They were standing close, too close. His arm was leaning against the wall behind her, his body slightly angled toward hers in a way that felt intimate. Lana's face was tilted up toward him, and she was laughing, but not the carefree laugh I usually loved hearing from her. It was different, soft, private, like they were sharing a secret. Something tightened in my chest. I slowed my steps, my feet suddenly heavy, as if I didn't want to see any more. But I couldn't stop watching. Her hand rested lightly on Alex's forearm, fingers brushing against his sleeve in a way that made my skin crawl. It was subtle, but it wasn't the kind of touch you give a friend. It was deliberate. I felt a rush of heat, anger, confusion, betrayal, all crashing over me at once. What the hell was going on? My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. But then Lana shifted slightly, and our eyes met. She saw me. For a second, her face was unreadable. But then, slowly, a smile tugged at the corner of her lips. Not a surprised smile, not even an apologetic one. It was knowing. She knew. A cold realization crept over me. She had known this whole time. She had planned this. The matching costumes, the masks, the way she had disappeared right before everything went down with Emily. None of it was an accident. It had all been part of her plan. The ground seemed to fall out from under me. My mind screamed in denial, but deep down I knew. Lana had orchestrated this whole night, knowing exactly what would happen. And I had walked right into her trap. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but my feet were glued to the floor. My mouth went dry, my pulse thundering in my ears. Everything, the fun, the flirtation, the mystery, it was all just smoke and mirrors. I'd been played. Lana turned back to Alex, her smile fading as she said something I couldn't hear, her body language as relaxed as ever. They looked like the perfect couple, and that made it even worse. My wife was standing there just feet away from me, and yet it felt like I didn't even know her anymore. How long had she been planning this? I stood there rooted to the spot, feeling the weight of it all crashing down on me. Lana had set this up. Every detail of the night had been crafted to lead us here. To this moment. I wanted to storm over to her, to demand an explanation, but something held me back. Maybe it was the way she smiled at me, almost daring me to react. Or maybe it was the sinking realization that I'd already lost, that I was playing a game where the rules had been written without me. But I couldn't stay frozen forever. With my heart pounding in my chest, I finally forced myself to walk over. As I approached, Lana turned back to Alex, her fingers still lightly brushing his arm as if nothing was wrong. Alex barely noticed me until I was standing right next to them. And when he did, he quickly straightened up, awkwardly stepping away from Lana. But she didn't move. Her eyes met mine, calm and steady, like she'd been expecting this. "Having fun?" she asked, her voice smooth, with just a hint of amusement. I couldn't respond at first. My thoughts jumbled, my mouth dry. My mind flashed back to everything that had happened tonight, the confusion, the mix-up, the way she had disappeared right when I had fallen into her trap. "Where were you?" I finally managed to ask, my voice sharper than I intended. Lana raised an eyebrow, her smile fading only slightly. "Oh, here and there," she said, her tone nonchalant, like I'd just asked her about something trivial. She glanced at Alex, who looked more uncomfortable by the second, before turning her gaze back to me. "What's wrong, Mark? You seem tense." That smile again. That knowing, infuriating smile. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to just come out with it. To tell her that I knew what she had done, that I knew everything. But part of me still didn't want to believe it, didn't want to accept that the woman I had loved for all these years could have done something like this. And yet here we were. "Where's Emily?" I asked, avoiding the question I really wanted to ask. Lana shrugged. "Probably around. We got separated too? At some point. These masks make it easy to get a little lost, don't they?" She tilted her head, watching me closely, waiting for my reaction. And in that moment I knew for certain she was in control. Every word she spoke, every little gesture, was carefully calculated. This wasn't the first time she'd thought about this. She had wanted this, planned this, maybe for longer than I could even imagine. "Why?" I blurted out, my voice strained. Lana's smile widened slightly, as if she had been waiting for that question all night. She leaned in closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear. "Because I wanted to see how far you'd go." For a second, the words didn't register. Then, like ice water being poured over my head, I understood. She wasn't just testing me, she was toying with me, seeing how far she could push before I broke. And the worst part? I had played right into her hands. I stepped back, feeling the room spin around me, the noise of the party suddenly muffled, distant. Lana didn't move. She just stood there watching me, completely unfazed by the chaos she had created. I couldn't stay there any longer. The noise of the party, the sight of Lana standing next to Alex, and that smirk, it was too much. I turned and walked away, my feet moving on instinct, carrying me through the crowd as my mind raced. She wanted to see how far I'd go? What the hell did that mean? And more importantly, how long had she been planning this? Every memory from the past few weeks replayed in my head. Her excitement about the party, the matching costumes, the way she pushed for the masks. It all seemed so harmless at the time, but now it felt calculated, like every detail had been carefully orchestrated to lead us to this moment. And Emily, the look on her face when she realized what had happened. She hadn't known. I was sure of it. She had been just as shocked as I was. But that only made things worse. If Lana had planned all of this, what did it mean for Emily and Alex? Were they just pawns in her game too? I found a quiet corner near the back of the house, away from the partygoers. I needed to think, to breathe, but my thoughts wouldn't stop spinning. I felt like a fool. How could I not have seen this coming? The door creaked open behind me, and I turned, expecting to see Lana. Instead, it was Alex. He stepped in hesitantly, his mask dangling from his hand. His expression was a mix of concern and confusion, like he was trying to figure out what was going on, but didn't know where to start. "Mark," he began, his voice low, "you okay, man? You kind of stormed off back there." I stared at him, trying to gauge if he knew anything. Was he in on it? Or was he just as blindsided as I was? "Do you have any idea what's going on?" I asked, my voice harsher than I intended. Alex blinked, clearly caught off guard. "What do you mean?" I hesitated, unsure of how much to say. But then again, why hold back? He was my best friend. And if anyone deserved to know the truth, it was him. Lana, she's been planning this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. All of it. The costumes, the masks, the mix-up. My throat tightened as I forced the words out. It wasn't an accident. Alex's eyes widened, and for a moment, he looked like he didn't believe me. But then, slowly, the pieces started to click into place. He glanced back toward the party, where Lana was still somewhere, probably smiling, probably watching this all unfold exactly the way she wanted. Wait, are you saying she? Yes, I cut him off, my voice sharper now. She knew exactly what was going to happen. She set it up so that we'd all... I couldn't finish the sentence. The weight of it was too much. Alex's face drained of color as the realization hit him. You're telling me Lana did this on purpose? She set you up to sleep with Emily? I nodded, the knot in my stomach tightening even more. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The sound of the party continued to hum in the background, but it felt distant, like we were in some separate, twisted reality. Finally, Alex broke the silence. Why would she do something like that? What the hell does she get out of it? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But the pieces were slowly falling into place in my mind. This wasn't just about some sick game or experiment. Lana had a reason. A motive. She's setting me up, I said quietly. For something bigger. Alex frowned, clearly not following. Setting you up for what? I swallowed hard. I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. Alex stood there, dumbfounded, his mind clearly grappling with what I had just told him. But I couldn't stay in this room, locked in confusion and uncertainty. I needed answers. And there was only one person who had them, Lana. I stepped past Alex, my jaw clenched, and headed back toward the party. My feet moved quickly, each step heavier than the last. I didn't know how far Lana had taken this twisted plan, but I knew one thing. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I scanned the crowd as I made my way through the party, pushing past people still lost in their drunken fun, unaware of the chaos beneath the surface. The music pounded in my ears, but it felt distant, like it was happening in a different world. I was operating on pure adrenaline now, the pieces of Lana's deception snapping together in my mind, each revelation hitting harder than the last. Finally, I spotted her. Lana was by the bar, talking to someone in a mask, her body relaxed, her face glowing with confidence. She was in her element, completely in control, while I was unraveling. But not for long. I strode up to her, my heart racing, and without thinking, I grabbed her arm, pulling her away from the bar. She didn't resist, didn't even look surprised. In fact, her eyes gleamed with something like satisfaction, as if this was exactly what she had been waiting for. Mark, she said calmly, a trace of amusement in her voice. What's gotten into you? Enough with the games, I snapped, my voice low and sharp. I didn't care who was around us anymore. I didn't care about the party, or the people, or the masks. All I cared about was getting to the truth. I know what you've done. I know you set this all up. Lana didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. Instead, she raised an eyebrow, tilting her head slightly, that infuriating smile still playing on her lips. Set what up? She asked, her voice as smooth as ever. I don't know what you're talking about, but I wasn't backing down. Not this time. The costumes. The masks. Everything. You planned this, didn't you? You wanted me to make that mistake. With Emily. You wanted this to happen. Lana stared at me for a moment, her eyes glinting in the dim light. And then, slowly, she began to laugh. It was a soft, mocking laugh, but it cut through me like a knife. Mark, she said, shaking her head slightly, as if I were a child who just didn't understand the rules of the game. You give me too much credit. What happened tonight, that was all you. You and your impulses. You were the one who couldn't tell the difference between your wife and another woman. Her words stung, but I knew better now. She was trying to twist this, trying to manipulate the situation again. But I wouldn't let her. You knew I wouldn't be able to tell, I said, my voice rising. That's why you pushed for the matching costumes. That's why you disappeared. You wanted this to happen. Why, Lana? What are you after? For the first time, her smile faltered. Just for a split second, but I saw it. A crack in her perfect composure. I pressed on. What are you trying to get out of this? What's your angle? Lana's eyes darkened, and her smile faded completely. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. You think you're so clever, don't you? You think you figured it all out. She leaned in, so close I could feel her breath on my skin. But here's the thing, Mark. You're not the only one who's been playing a game. And you've already lost. My stomach twisted as her words sank in. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, she pulled back, her expression hardening. You want to know why I did this? She said, her voice cold now. Because I wanted to see you fail. I wanted to watch you make the wrong choice. And you did. I stared at her, my heart pounding. That's it? I asked, my voice trembling with disbelief. You wanted to ruin our marriage for what? A test. Lana's eyes flickered with something darker, something I hadn't seen before. No, Mark, she said quietly. Not just that. She paused for a moment, letting the silence stretch between us, before finally dropping the bombshell. I wanted a reason to leave you. And now? Thanks to your little mistake with Emily, I've got all the proof I need. Her words hit me like a freight train. Proof? Proof of what? Then it clicked, the divorce. Lana didn't just want out. She wanted everything. I stood there, speechless, the pieces of her plan falling into place faster than I could process. She had orchestrated all of it, the costumes, the masks, the mix-up with Emily, all to trap me, to make me look like the guilty party in our marriage. She wanted me to be the one who was caught in the wrong, to give her the upper hand in the divorce. And with what happened tonight, she had exactly what she needed. You planned this so you could take everything, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Lana's smile returned, colder this time. You're smarter than I give you credit for, Mark. But yes, that's exactly what I've done. I've been planning this for months. The costumes were just a piece of the puzzle. I swallowed hard, anger bubbling inside me. But I knew that reacting now would only play into her hands. And now, when I file for divorce, she continued, I'll have proof that you were unfaithful. You won't have a leg to stand on. I'll take the house, the assets, everything. My fists clenched, my pulse quickening. She was right. If she spun the story like this, it would look like I was the one who destroyed our marriage. With no evidence of her manipulation, she'd get everything. But I wasn't done yet. She may have set the trap, but I still had time to turn it against her. You think you've won, don't you? I said, forcing a calmness into my voice. But you've overlooked one thing, Lana. She arched an eyebrow, clearly curious, but not intimidated. Oh? And what's that? I took a step closer, lowering my voice. You left evidence behind too. You think I haven't noticed how carefully you orchestrated tonight? But I'm not the only one who saw what was going on. There are witnesses, and I can prove you set this up. Alex, Emily, they'll back me up. You think this was foolproof, but you slipped up. For the first time, Lana's expression faltered. I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. You can't prove anything, she hissed, her confidence wavering for just a moment. It's your word against mine. Maybe, I said, but I think it'll be enough to show just how far you've gone to ruin this marriage. And trust me, I'll make sure the truth comes out. You won't get away with this. For a moment, the silence between us was heavy, tense. Lana's calculating eyes scanned my face, searching for cracks, for signs of weakness. But I wasn't giving her any. Finally, she stepped back, her cold mask slipping back into place. We'll see about that, Mark, she said softly. But one way or another, this is over. Without another word, she turned and disappeared into the crowd, leaving me standing there, the reality of what had just happened crashing down around me. The game had shifted, but it wasn't finished yet. Now it was my turn to play. Lana was gone, but I couldn't just stand there, frozen in place. I needed to act and fast. She thought she had me cornered, but there were still ways to turn this around. I knew what I had to do. I needed Alex and Emily on my side. If they backed me up, if they confirmed Lana's manipulation, her entire plan would crumble. I pushed my way through the crowd, searching for Alex. My pulse was racing, but my mind was clearer now. This wasn't about shock or betrayal anymore, it was survival. I found him near the back of the party, sitting on a couch, his head in his hands. He looked up when he saw me approach, confusion and guilt written all over his face. Mark, he started, but I cut him off. No time for that, I said quickly. Listen, we've been played by Lana. Alex blinked, clearly struggling to keep up. What do you mean? Lana set this whole thing up, the costumes, the mix-up with Emily. She wanted to make sure I'd fall into this trap so she could take everything in the divorce. She wants the house, the money, all of it. And she's planning to use tonight as proof against me. Alex's face paled as the truth sank in. Wait, she set us up? Yes. But we can stop her. I need you and Emily to back me up. Tell the truth about what really happened tonight. She's trying to make it look like I'm the bad guy. But if we show the court she orchestrated the whole thing, it'll blow up in her face. Alex hesitated, his brow furrowed. Emily, she doesn't know. She thinks it was just a mistake. Then you need to tell her the truth, I said, my voice urgent. If you don't, Lana's going to destroy everything, and we'll all be caught in her trap. Alex stared at me for a long moment, his expression conflicted. Then, finally, he nodded. Okay, I'll talk to Emily. We'll do what's right. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I had Alex. Now I just needed to stay one step ahead of Lana. The next morning, I called my lawyer. I wasn't waiting for Lana to file first. I laid it all out. The trap she had set, the evidence I'd gathered, and the testimonies I could get from Alex and Emily. My lawyer listened carefully, nodding as I spoke. We can work with this, she said. If we can prove that Lana orchestrated everything, we can undermine her entire case. It won't be easy, but we can build a solid defense. Lana might have been one step ahead last night, but now the game was mine to control. I had the truth on my side, and I wasn't going to let her destroy everything I'd built. This wasn't just about money or property. It was about exposing her for the manipulator she really was. By the time I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't had in days. Lana had underestimated me, and now it was her turn to pay the price. The weeks leading up to the court date felt like a blur. I had met with Alex and Emily several times, explaining the full extent of Lana's manipulation. Emily was devastated when she realized the truth, but eventually, both of them agreed to testify on my behalf. Their testimonies were crucial. They were the key to proving Lana's plan and breaking down her case. The day finally came. In the courtroom, everything felt surreal. Lana sat across from me, perfectly composed, as if none of this bothered her. She was dressed immaculately, with that same calm, calculating smile she always wore. Her lawyer laid out her case first, painting me as the unfaithful husband who had wrecked our marriage. I could see the trap she'd set from a mile away, and I clenched my fists under the table, waiting for my turn to strike. When my lawyer stood up to present our side, the tide began to turn. We went in hard, pulling apart every piece of Lana's story, showing how it had all been orchestrated. Then came the testimonies from Alex and Emily. They laid out the truth, how Lana had convinced them to wear matching costumes, how she had subtly manipulated the events of the party, how none of it had been a coincidence. Lana's face remained composed, but I saw the cracks forming in her confidence. She hadn't expected me to fight back this way. As Alex and Emily testified, her lawyer fidgeted more and more, clearly sensing that their case was slipping. Lana tried to stay calm, but for the first time, I saw her eyes narrow, her perfect mask starting to falter. When the final moments of the trial came, my lawyer delivered the closing statement with precision, weaving together the deception, the manipulation, and the false narrative Lana had tried to create. We didn't just attack her case, we dismantled it piece by piece. The courtroom was silent as the judge delivered the final verdict. My heart pounded in my chest as I waited for the words that would determine everything. My future, my life, everything Lana had tried to steal. The court finds that the actions of the defendant, Lana, were premeditated and intentionally designed to manipulate the outcome of this case, the judge said, his voice clear and firm. As such, the court rules in favor of the plaintiff, Mark. The divorce will proceed without the distribution of assets, as requested by the defendant. I couldn't breathe. For a moment, it felt like everything around me had stopped. Lana's plan had failed. She stared straight ahead, her face stone cold, refusing to show any reaction. But I knew I had won. I had exposed her for who she truly was, and now she had lost everything she had tried so desperately to take from me. As I left the courtroom, the weight of the last few months finally lifted from my shoulders. This wasn't the victory I had ever imagined needing, but it was one I'd fought for, and it was mine. Weeks later, after the dust had settled, I stood in the house, my house, the one Lana had tried to take from me. It was quiet now, no longer filled with the tension and deceit that had consumed our lives. I thought about everything that had happened, the party, the betrayal, the manipulation, and how it had all led to this moment. I wasn't the same person I had been before. Lana had shown me a side of her I'd never known existed, and that knowledge had changed me. But I wasn't broken. I'd survived, and I'd come out stronger on the other side. As I looked around, the empty silence felt more like peace than loneliness. This was my life now, clean, free from the games, the traps, the lies. And, for the first time in months, I felt like I could finally breathe.